Hi guys, Songboy13. I've got a brand new video out for you today. Now, recently, well, if you're from North America and you may have heard about this, Texas has been hit by some of the worst hailstorms they've seen, for many years really. There's been a lot of damage been reported, especially certain places like Austin in Texas back on the 25th of March. There's been a lot of damage along with the severe weather threats. But what has actually been the top 10 worst hailstorm events ever in the state of Texas? Well, you're about to find out. So, next few minutes I'll be going through my top 10 events of what the worst hailstorms have been reported throughout Texas. So, let's begin the video after the intro. Every day is different. Every video is different. But my passion will always be the same. This is Kai for Warshawn, aka Stormboy13, and the storm has arrived. Wow! Number 10 on the list, I don't know how you pronounce it, Colton in Texas. Basically, that storm cost around $625 million in damages found then. Date was back on June 6th, 2018, went in the early hours of Wednesday morning. Near Dallas in Texas, the hail reported was around 3 inches, which was around baseball-sized hailstones, so that was enough to cause quite a considerable amount of damage. Number 9 on the list, McAllen in Texas. Now the damage was just slightly lower to around $600 million, but the damage was more noticeable and more widespread. This was recorded back on March 29th, 2012, so it was almost 10 years ago. The hailstorm, baseball-sized hail was reported in many places. It was actually, particularly in one area in the Rio Grande, I think that's how you pronounce it, in Texas. So they've seen the worst hailstorm back then, and aid with the 75-mile-per-hour winds, that damage was literally equivalent to near a hurricane type of power. Number 8 on the list, Piano in Texas, date March 23rd, 2016. The damage was around $700 million. That storm was produced from a dry line front. It moved eastwards along the Interstate 35 corridor. The worst affected places were around northern Dallas and the southern Collin County. That storm obviously produced large hail, damaging winds, and there was even one tornado reported that day. With tornadic force-like winds, the damage was fairly widespread and was enough to cost roughly around $700 million. Number 7 on the list, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Dallas is on a hot spot for tornadoes and hailstorms. Back on April 3rd, 2012, the damage back that time was around $775 million. One of the worst affected areas during that storm back in that early April day was in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas airport, when roughly around 110 airplanes were either badly damaged or destroyed, and they were off service until further notice. There was also 22 tornadoes reported that day. Thankfully, no fatalities. 29 people were injured, but I think it's safe to say that Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas airport has probably witnessed one of the worst storms of all time. Number 6, Denton in Texas, back on April 3rd, 2014. The damage was estimated to be around $850 million. Softball hail was reported around in the Denton area, which was estimated to be around $850 million. It also came along with a dry line front with strong to severe thunderstorms and moved eastwards around the region and parts of Texas that day. On that same day, there were also 3 tornadoes being reported. Number 5 on the list, and definitely a very historic one, Dallas in Texas, June 13th, 2012, where the damage was around $890 million. There was like 4 major supercells reported around in the Dallas Central Texas region that day, and obviously with the supercells been merged as well, which produced 1 tornado, but mainly the events were hailstorms, and the hailstones were about at least 3 inches in the meteor, so it's over golf ball, near softball size, and that extent of the hail was enough to like severely damage roofs, cars, windows were completely shattered. It took months, or if not a few years, to even get them all repaired. So basically that's how much damage it caused, around $890 million. Around 10,000 homes or cars have been badly damaged as well, with the windows being smashed. Definitely one of the worst hailstorm related days ever in Dallas. But not just that, normally, you know, realistically hailstorms normally only last about 5 to 10 minutes. That one lasted for at least half an hour. Imagine that damage that was caused around that time. Not good. Number 4 on the list, North Texas. No particular location, because it was a very widespread event. Occurred on April 5th, 2003, so actually that was almost 20 years ago. There was 3 storm supercells that day, and yet even though only 3 people were injured, surprisingly, the more of the focus was how widespread the damage was, because all those storms were widespread. During the more modern times, the damage was actually around $1.2 billion, but it was just a little bit under that back then, almost 20 years ago. Those kind of storms obviously damaged automobiles, trees, houses, you name it, power lines, and the damage was there for several weeks and months, and that's why it estimated to be around $850 million to $1.2 billion back then. And Fort Worth near Dallas in Texas was also one of the worst hit regions back then. Number 3 on the list, Fort Worth / Waco in Texas. Date was April 28th, 1992. Damage ranged between $750 million to $1.3 billion. There were 2 huge hailstorms around that day. It was in the evening hours, so roughly it'll be rush hour time, and people living between the Waco and the Fort Worth region probably would have witnessed one of the worst evenings of their lives. The homes were completely destroyed, along with the roofs being badly damaged. The hailstones was grapefruit sized, 4.5 inches a meter. Imagine seeing that. That would actually be enough to kill you. And but basically the damage was, needed to be said, not much to describe. But obviously the damage was there. It was just catastrophic. Unsurprisingly, most windows were smashed, the roofs were badly damaged or even destroyed. People obviously had to be evacuated. But yeah, the whole event throughout from Fort Worth to Waco in Texas lasted for approximately 5 hours. So imagine having to put up with that amount of time, with the sheer terror of that storm, along with the hailstorm that damaged the windows and estimating a lot of destruction. It's just been horrific. So yeah, that is one of Texas's all-time worst hailstorms ever in this states. Number 2 on the list, San Antonio in Texas, April 12, 2016, and one of the worst hailstorms ever in that city of Texas. The damage was between $1.4 and $1.5 billion. Bexar County recorded its biggest hailstone ever, 4.5 at least in the meteor size. That's equivalent again of a grapefruit. Roughly between 136,000 homes and 125,000 cars were completely damaged or destroyed. This was due to an upper level low pressure system mixing with the winds from the southwest of the deserts, combined with a stationary front to produce strong to powerful thunderstorms across southern central Texas, and that is what resulted around $1.4 billion at least in damages, according to some certain insurances. And finally, number 1 on the list, North Texas, May 5th, 1995. The damage was between $1.1 to $1.8 billion. So all around North Texas. This was in association with a squall front. Just after 5:30 p.m, ahead of an intense squall front, it moved westwards across North Texas, round in the Palo Alto/Parker County. Very, very quickly, because of the intense pressure in the atmosphere, the storms became severe, and unfortunately, sadly, 2 deaths have been reported after large hail with around golf ball size, 18 inches deep, in the southern parts of Parker County. It moved readily through around, but unfortunately it got worse. Around 7 p.m, the storm moved east-northeastwards. Hail turned from golf ball size to grapefruit size, where the damage was fairly widespread. The exact location was in Tarrant County, and that particular day there was a Mayfest festival. Talk about awful timing. There was like roughly 10,000 people attending that event. With the storms moved in on that particular evening, loads of people got injured, unsurprisingly, from the large hail. Not just that, with strong winds and flash flooding being reported, there was sadly another fatality. Just that, just before 10 to 8, the squall line then clashed in with that severe thunderstorm near around the Dallas County area. That merged together, and then up until when the storm died out, it produced record rainfall, with obviously huge flooding problems in the event. And sadly, at least 17 people back then that day was drowned from record rainfall and flash flooding. Because it came so quick, there wasn't enough preparation time for everyone to get evacuated. There was also record wind. The wind speed amounts were pretty relentless to handle this, and all combined with the Dallas, Tarrant and the Parker counties on that day, May 5th, 1995, the damage estimated back then was around $1.8 billion. And that was one of the, or if not the worst known hailstorm ever in the Texas states. And I think ever since, there hasn't been a hailstorm event that's been quite as devastating as that. But just goes to show Mother Nature is at its full strength. Anyways, that is it for this video. Hope you found it interesting, if you wanted to know some hail facts. And that's it. Like, comment, subscribe. More videos are coming with you soon. And stay safe. And storm is now out.